Everyone, welcome to the Mike Gormley Show. You can be found on, well, you've probably already found it, but anyway, it's on all kinds of platforms and radio stations in Boston and Philadelphia, New York, London. It gets around. So please welcome my great guests today, Mr. Martin Nethercutt, sorry, and RUTH McCARTNey. It's good to see both of you.
Likewise, great to see you.
Good to see you, Mike.
Now, often when we get together, we talk about music a lot, but I'll explain to people that a little while ago, I got to see Martin and Ruth at a morning breakfast, room full of composers and engineers and such, and they started talking about AI, and they had a demonstration and that sort of thing. So AI in the studio, I'm sure, is not all that new. I mean, it's relatively new, but it was new to a lot of people in that crowd, including me, and what you talked about. So give me just a little background on McCartney Media, and you've got your studio and you've got various things going on. Give us a little update on that, and then we can get into the AI world.
Well, shall I speak to the business? And he's the tech head. I'm the mouthpiece, the mile a minute talker. So we started McCartney Multimedia in 1994 in Nashville, Tennessee. We lost everything in the Northridge earthquake, got in our little car and a big yellow truck, and off we went to Nashville with the rest of the world and discovered this thing called the internet. So being early web adopters, we started McCartney Multimedia, and we started buying up domain names and giving them away to people as long as they let us develop their website, which we still do some 28 years later. And that just morphed into, all of the things technology, putting QR codes and databases on the web. And then along, of course, about 3 or 4 years ago comes this thing called AI, and being specifically interested in audio, having both been musicians our whole careers. Martin still has his GEIST project. We thought, well, during what better time than a pandemic to roll your sleeves up, learn something new, and get out there and protect people. And we're kind of the sheriff of the spoken voice. And I'll let Martin speak to that part.
Yeah, so when we founded McCartney Multimedia, everybody always refers to it as media, but it's actually multimedia, because I was always fascinated as a creative to incorporate all the arts that are out there. So video, audio, music, text, spoken word. And as Ruth said, when this AI development started to slowly creeping into the creative space, Ruth started working on pictures and manipulation of prompts and all that good stuff with Stable Diffusion and all these language models that are out there. I focused, since I'm a singer and a producer, I focused more on the spoken word aspect of it. That fascinated me. How do you get a clone of a voice to emulate emotion, the original pauses, the inflections, and all that stuff? In the beginning, it was very rudimentary. You got a very a very computerized voice at first, but since the focus is a large language model, that means the more you feed it, the better it's going to get. And in the early days, I was playing around with some friends of mine and going like, hey, get in the vocal booth and record for me 3 minutes of your voice, and I'll clone you. And the instinctive reaction from all these people always was, oh my God, I can't believe that's me. And the test is always send the clone of what you just said to your mother. And if your mother or your wife, and if she doesn't recognize it, it's a good clone.
Yeah.
Right.
So that led to, as Ruth mentioned, to the afterthought of, well, wait a minute. If our voiceover, I'm a big German voiceover guy. I do a lot for BMW, Siemens, and all those companies. And all of a sudden, I noticed that my income dropped about 70%, because I used to get like 5, 6 sessions and auditions a week. Now it dropped down to 1 or 2 a month. So then I found out that they cloned my voice without my permission, and there's nothing I can do because I signed on the dotted line. And part of it included that my voice can be used for cloning purposes, for text-to-speech. So I thought, well, if that affects me, what are people going to do that are actually dependent upon their livelihoods in voiceover or music creation and so forth? How can you actually confirm and test if that clone of your voice is legit or not?
So
And
that's
that
what
was a big factor. Sorry to interrupt for a second, but that was a big factor in the relatively recent strikes going on in Hollywood, was the
Correct.
AI effect.
That's right. And that's when we decided to take the position of defending copyright and defending the artist and defending the voice. So again, during the pandemic, I spent hours on conference calls with the Copyright Office, the Trademark Office, trademark and patent attorneys, only to find out and have confirmed, much to my horror, that you cannot copyright your timbre of your voice. You can copyright the words of what you're saying, the poem or the prose or the song that you're singing, if it's a singing voice, but you can't actually copyright the voice pattern. So that's what, with a brand like McCartney, obviously coming from a background in the music business, we are trying to protect voice actors and working into singers as to, you know, how not to get ripped off. So then that led to having to work with various other technological platforms, and we're working with a company out of London, IV, and the CEO, Nigel Cannings. They do all of the voice recognition for the Metropolitan Police, Barclays Bank, the Brussels government buildings. So if you call in and say, you know, give me my bank balance, they verify the voice in real time against clones, and they've developed an incredible technology which we have licensed over here, that we are now able to tell you about 80% of the time, if we have your voice in our verified voice vault, and we compare it to a clone that you think you've been cloned or you know you have, and you bring us in certain areas, and I'll let Martin speak to that, we can, with the probability of 8 out of 10, we can tell you which software cloned it, what IP address, where in the world, and who ripped you off and who to go after. Because they make this fatal mistake that we don't want to give away too much, but you want to talk about digital wind?
Yeah. There's something that I discovered while working in AI in the model, when I started to clone voices, that it always would leave at the end. You know that little piece in the middle when it's quiet, the strip of silence, they call it? I call it digital wind, because when I had headphones on, just to make sure that the clone was accurately interpreting what I was typing. So it's text to speech, right? So in those little pauses, I can always hear this little, almost like a little thunderstorm that happened in the silence part. I'm like, that's weird. That shouldn't be. It should be absolutely zero volume, should be zero silence. So I analyzed the file, and it turns out that's where cloning systems and language models put their digital watermark, i.e., this is where you can find out what software was used to clone your voice.
Which, when we
You can
provide
track them down. You can track down if somebody does that. You could find them.
right, and we can track down which software they're using. There's only really 11 good ones as of the time of speaking, and you know, we can help you go after them. We provide what we call litigation support, and we can give all of the paperwork to your lawyer on a USB stick, and certainly help you make the case for, you know, hey, you cloned my voice and I want my money. Right. So then on the flip side, we have clients who are actors and famous voices from film and television that are stored with us, and we have stored their original voice and given them a certificate of authenticity with a date and what we call the purple padlock to put on their social media, a verification. And then we have also cloned them, which is step 2 in our service. And they could be on a plane to Bali, and all of a sudden they get a $3,500 voiceover commercial job in, but they can't do it. They send us the script, we voice it for them, we send it back to the actor sends it to the client. If the client accepts it, hey, nobody's any the wiser, and they don't have to step in front of a microphone, stop what they're doing, nothing. It's
They don't have to step in front of a
indiscernible.
microphone ever again.
Ever again.
Ever
Precisely.
again, yeah.
We can have them read
You gotta
anything with their permission. Yeah. absolutely. So
The only downside to that is that you still have to do a lot of post. You have to get rid of the digital wind. Now, if you want to be totally accurate in the presentation, so you really can't tell, you'll have to edit every pause and set it to silence. So that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I produced an audiobook for a client completely in his cloned voice. He said, I don't want to read 860 pages of my book. I said, give me 3 minutes of good digital audio from you and go in a good studio and give me your voice, and it can be done. What I realized when you work with this kind of stuff, I was ambitious in it. Well, this was 2 years ago almost. So I was still a little new, and
he copied and pasted chapter 1 and just dumped it in.
well, I copied in 30 pages, and what I realized was the clone came back and said, first 2 sentences were great, first paragraph was awesome, and then the volume started to fade on the export. I'm like, what? So I realized that since it's a large language model, it needed baby steps to get bigger passages of the book done. So I had to go sentence by sentence by sentence by sentence.
Oh, no.
We slightly underbid that job.
And then I discovered my first hallucination. I mean, your listeners might know what an AI hallucination is. If you do it in pictures, that's the best way I can explain it.
6 fingers and 3
6
thumbs.
fingers, and after the 15th generation of the picture you're trying to get out of AI, it puts a pink pig in there, and nobody knows why.
Right.
So scientists are thinking that if you think of AI as a toddler in a sandbox, it has been around that sandbox so much that it just throws stuff out. It wants to jump out, and it wants to experience new realms. It wants to learn more. Case in point, I finished the audiobook and then did not go back to the model for like 3 months. And I was doing other stuff, and I came back, and the author said, can you, here's what I want to say as a promo. Can you use my clone and just use it for the promo? It's only 30 seconds, like we did at the top of the show. And I go like, sure. And so I put it in, and it came back with 125% accuracy.
It was unbelievable.
So now it learned, basically, it's like Hal from Odyssey in Space.
Yeah, it's got it.
It just says, Martin, where have you been? I've been learning all this time.
Mhm. It's like a toddler, it wants attention.
That's amazing. Well, we're going to head to our first break in a minute. We're going to also change subjects slightly because the song we're going to listen to as we go out to commercial is called Russian Nights.
Uh-oh.
But it was Ruth McCartney, or was
Yeah.
it? Yeah, it was. For some reason, I thought you'd used another name. But anyway, this was a big hit in parts of Europe and so on.
1993 in Russia. It was #1 in Russia in 1993.
What a great resume point. I think it's great. Okay, we're going to slide into a commercial, listening to Russian Nights by Ruth McCartney, and we will be back in a minute.
Really good.